Reddit, what's your best, "Oh, I'm actually the bad guy here" moment? I used to work security at a college bar and we would typically ask people to leave who were too intoxicated. One night I was posted up in the DJ booth because it was our normal shoulder-to-shoulder level of busy, and I watched this guy start stumbling and drinking his beer in a really weird way. I make my way over to him and tell him he has to leave because he is too drunk. He tries to tell me something but I can't understand what he said because the music is so loud and he was slurring his words. We get outside and he tells me that he has cerebral palsy, which was pretty obvious after the fact. He was cool about it and I let him back in, but I don't think I have ever felt like a bigger dick than that night. You know when you get in an argument with someone and you come up with the perfect solution for the situation later? About 66% of the trains I get from Dublin to Cork, someone is sitting in a pre-booked seat that doesn't belong to them, whether it's been mine or another person, and these people have all been cantankerous old farts who have no desire whatsoever to shift themselves from a seat they didn't reserve. I had a man who was probably in his 80s stand up to his full height, a foot shorter than me, and practically bellow in my face that he didn't care that I'd booked the seat. He wasn't moving, while his shrew wife looked on with an air of proprietorial approval. It's pretty rotten. Finally, however, last month I boarded a train. Someone was sitting in my seat with his partner, and I was just the right combination of tired and stressed to let him have it. I'd been waiting for months for this moment. I showed my ticket, told them it was my seat, insisted they move, channeled Seinfeld for the first and hopefully last time in my life, and finally stormed off up the train when they continued to sit in my seat, full of righteous vindication that I was going to get my way. Finally, I was going to get one over the train. No longer shall I back down to the whims of rude commuters, now it is they who shall yield to the righteous powers of reservation. I went up to the staff cabin, asked for an administrator, told him the situation, and presented him with my ticket. This was met with, "Ah, I see the problem here, sir. You've reserved a seat on the 1800 hours train, this is the 1600 hours train." I'd booked the ticket for 6 p.m. and become mixed up with the 6 and 1600 hours, 4 p.m. I was mortified. I meekly took a seat near the opposite end of the train and didn't say a word to anyone else for the next 3 hours. In my quest to defeat rude commuter, I had become him. Pulled out the gas station and this asshole was riding my bumper, honking his horn and waving and pointing. I pulled over and throwing my arms up ready for the altercation because I did nothing wrong. Turns out I drove off without closing my gas cap. Wasn't really such a big deal for how he was acting, but he was still just trying to help. I apologized and thanked him. "But sir, what if your check engine light comes on because of it? This is an emergency." In high school there was a kid who I unwittingly bullied. I actually thought he was a cool dude, and my friend group and I roughhoused a lot. Headlocks, finger circle game, dead legs, etc. I was just doing what I did with everyone I get along with. One day I came up behind him and did the thing where you kick someone's back leg into their front leg while they're walking and they trip on their feet. He turned around with fear and anger in his eyes and yelled, "Why do you have to be such a dick to me all the time?" My heart sank to my feet. I didn't realize that what I saw as friendly bonding play, he found really intimidating. We talked it out, and I spent the rest of my high school days being really nice to him. The weirdest part is that he was a pretty popular kid, not small by any means, and on a couple different sports teams. Goes to show, anybody can feel bullied. Realizing that the reason my partner and I are always fighting is because I am always picking fights. I'm still working on trying to fix this. This is a tough realization but a good one. Now you can grow as a person. Yes, this is actually a pretty rare opportunity. I was at a restaurant doing a coworker dinner thing when I noticed the woman at the next table was staring me down. Like, barely blinking, full-blown eye contact. After a while, I started getting pretty agitated when my subtle social cues to stop staring at me went wholly ignored. After about 20 minutes of this, I had enough of this lady's unsolicited rudeness, and I did the whole come at me, bro arms in the air move, thinking surely that would get my point across. I made a fairly big production of it. Only then did I realize that the lady was completely blind. Went to a friend of a friend's house to chill. Nice kid, but his house has crazy dirty dishes stacked to the ceiling, laundry strewn like carpeting, old takeout food bags from a ton of places everywhere, bags of garbage just laying in piles in the kitchen. The place stunk to high heaven and I had trouble getting comfortable. Later I commented on how dirty the place was to my friend. Turns out the guy's mom has cancer, and the guy has to help take care of her and his younger sibling, all while being a typical teenage boy. I felt bad for judging. You forgot to mention the part where you helped him clean up. 2 weeks ago, I was dropping someone off at Union Station. As I was exiting the parking lot, there was one of those gate things where you insert your ticket. I inserted my ticket and the person behind me began honking. The gate was literally in the process of lifting up. I laid on the horn, screaming, okay, I'm going, but they kept honking. I hit the accelerator and zoomed off, flicking them off for good measure in a very obvious way. I drive a convertible, so I put my hand right out the top, furious at them for honking at me to go when there was no way I could have gone any faster. I exited and turned left. A few moments later, the same car exited and also turned left, and pulled up to me. They put down their window, and I put down mine. Edit. Yes, everyone, you can have the windows up while in a convertible, it reduces the effect of the wind, and was like, what the duck do you want, huh? The lady in the other car said, you left your coffee mug on the back of your car. She wasn't even mad. I was totally shocked. I looked behind me and sure enough, I had set my tumbler on the top of the trunk, and she had been honking to try to let me know. I turned red, burst out laughing, told her I was so sorry for being a dick, pulled over, and got my cup. Could not believe what an ass I had been and how coolly she responded to the whole thing. Edit. Apparently the coffee mug not falling off of the back of the car is utterly baffling to some of you, so I'd like to offer this. GIF. I tried to weigh my thermos in the lab, but my tabletop scale only goes up to 60 grams. So, my thermos, filled with coffee, is more than 60 grams, but I couldn't tell you how much more it weighs. Edit. Inquiring minds want to know. My thermos is about 6.5 ounces and holds 16 ounces of coffee. Thus it weighs 1.3 pounds. The bottom is rubber. I guess that's why it didn't fall off. Although, from a karma viewpoint, it really probably should have, considering how much of a prick I was being. It was my mom's moment, but whatever. She was driving me and my brother home from the store when we were young when she drove through an intersection, screaming, "You got a stop sign, lady," out the window at a person she nearly hit. 10 seconds later my mother realized that she was in fact the one who blew through a stop sign. All she said was, "Oh." Like any good kids, we still to this day yell, "You got a stop sign, lady," at her. Gotta love a good family inside joke. I was driving home one day and a person in the car next to mine waved to me. I went to wave back and my hand instinctively flipped the other person off. Damn, this guy does not like being waved to. Used to think it was funny to quote Dodgeball and say you're adopted, your real parents don't even love you. Wish I could say that I learned my lesson the first time that I said this to someone who responded with actually I am adopted. Won the lottery twice. It was the moment I realized that I was, in fact, responsible for everything I did while mentally unstable. I spent years alienating everyone I knew by demanding that they forgive my shitty behavior because it wasn't me, it was my bipolar disorder. Everyone else was the bad guy, because they just didn't understand my illness. I was the victim. One day it just kind of clicked, no matter what the cause, I was the one who was hurting the people around me. It wasn't on them to understand and forgive my endless parade of insanity, it was on me to get help and stop being so toxic to everyone around me. It was that epiphany that really helped me turn the corner. While I'd sought help before, it was always with the mindset that I had no responsibility for, and therefore no control over, my illness. Edit, I-word. So one time I was in a high school assembly, and a bunch of kids in pajamas started walking into the auditorium. Pajamas were against my school's dress code. Me, thinking I was funny, yelled, "Hey, that's against the dress code." Turns out it was the special ed class. Really felt like a jackass. Couldn't make myself small enough in that crowd. Was there a reason they were all in pajamas? Maybe, sometimes the special ed class would have dress-up things. Thought I was saving someone from a bad marriage. Realized I was just convincing someone to cheat on their husband. Did she? Yeah. A lot. When I was in grade school, I had a serious problem keeping my mouth shut. Basically, if a thought popped into my head, I was dukkin saying it. Teachers didn't exactly appreciate the constant blurting out, but when I really crossed the line was when I made fun of a perfectly sweet girl, just because her mom smoked. Duck you, me. I was already a problem child, and while I wasn't technically expelled, I did have to leave and go to a different school. So yeah, basically expelled, but off the record. What's worse is that it took about 2 years of sulking for me to finally realize that I had it coming. Every bit of it. God, I can't believe how much of a shithead I was. I was a freshman in high school. I don't know why it occurred to me, but I figured out that if you rubbed the little cage that held your books under the desks the right way, that it would resonate and make this loud humming sound. I would sit there and wait for the teacher to turn her back and start. She would turn around and look at the air conditioner vent that was right above me. Of course when she did I would stop. She would look bewildered then turn back around. Of course I would start up again. Being the quiet kid, no one in the class suspected it was me. It was hilarious, until they closed the classroom down for a couple days because they had concerns about the air conditioners malfunctioning. Oh man, I still feel bad whenever I think about this. So about a year ago, I was on a long international plane flight. I always book the aisle seat because I have a GI disorder that means I sometimes have to get to the bathroom with very little notice, so being trapped in a middle or window seat is suboptimal. I get all seated for my flight, which is the second leg of probably 12 hours worth of travel, and I'm so exhausted I start to nod off before boarding is even finished. I'm awakened by a man politely asking if he can have my seat. Groggily, I explain that, no, sorry, I set it up this way because of an illness I have, and I get up so he can have the window seat. It was a small flight, so no middle seat, at least. The nerve of some people, right? If you wanted the aisle seat, why didn't you just choose it beforehand, random dude? The world doesn't revolve around you. Well, about 3 hours into the flight I wake up again, feeling slightly more human, and end up in conversation with my roommate. And within about 5 minutes, I discover that, no, he wasn't asking to switch seats, he was telling me that I was in his seat. Apparently the airline had switched who was seated where so that he could be closer to his wife and daughter, who were sitting across the aisle. I hadn't looked at my electronic boarding pass since going through security, so I didn't notice the change. I apologized profusely and offered to switch immediately, but the poor guy just said it was okay and declined. Aw. TLDR, I accidentally stole a dude's assigned seat on a plane, then got annoyed at him for trying to point out the discrepancy and proceeded to stay in said seat for the entire flight. Edit. Not sure why everyone is assuming I'm a dude, but definitely not. Which probably made it worse, as this middle-aged guy clearly had no idea what to do about a small early 20s-something girl, who looks more like a 12-year-old than anything, telling him he couldn't have his assigned seat. When I was 10 or so, a friend of mine got appendicitis, so the teacher asked us to write letters of support to her. Little me thought I could troll her in the same way I could do in the internet, which isn't even justified there, so I wrote an entire letter joking about her condition, wishing it got worse, saying in the end it's all a joke and I wish she got well. The teacher came to class mad and disappointed, and proceeded to read my letter without saying my name. I instantly knew I had dicked up and never did it again. Never did it again? How often does this come up? In middle school, I pulled some really creepy shit on a guy I liked. As in, an insane amount of physical stalking. I memorized his schedule only through following him everywhere, and I always appeared in the same places he was. Took one of his belongings that he forgot somewhere, and took an assignment of his that was posted on a class corkboard because I just wanted his stuff. At the time, it didn't even occur to me that what I was doing was dickhead up. All I thought about was how can I be around this person without having to interact with him? It's been over half a decade since then. If I did any of the shit I did as an adult I would have been arrested with at least a few restraining orders. My friends told me it was messed up but I refused to listen. I probably did some serious, permanent mental damage to the poor kid. I hope he's managed to recover and I hope he never has to worry about anything like this again. He deserves the relief. Actually happened yesterday. It's not that bad of a thing but I was driving on a road and saw someone on a side street pull out onto my road right in front of a girl that was trying to cross the street. Immediately I got pissed that this douche almost hit a girl just to be fast so I followed him for about 30 seconds until he parked so I drove up right next to him, stopped and said, "Hey asshole. You almost killed that girl back there. What the duck are you thinking?" He looked confused and just said, "Dude, she waved me ahead and let me go. What the duck are you talking about?" Immediately I started to apologize, telling him that it looked bad from where I was but yeah I went from hero to zero real quick. Looked through my YouTube comment history from 5 years ago. I'm getting second-hand embarrassment just thinking about it, and I have no idea what you even said. I broke up with a close friend and made up with them recently. I was being emotional and lashed out, questioning their friendship because they wouldn't drop everything they're doing for me. I know now I'm wrong. My friend has always been there for me. I still feel bad even though I apologized. I'm a bad friend. Literally fist fighting one of my friends over the ownership rights to wear a green felt hat on St. Patrick's Day. It was his hat. Made fun of a friend for wearing dog tags. Turns out he used them to help others identify his epilepsy in lieu of an identifier bracelet. Whoops. Got into a fist fight. We were equally sized and matched, but I came out on top. For those of you who have ever been in a fist fight, you know that line you're not supposed to cross? You know, when the fight should be over but you throw another punch. I crossed that line. I threw several more punches. I wasn't proud afterward. I'm not entirely sure this fits, but I'll put it down anyway. I used to be insanely shy and thought everyone hated me for no reason because they wouldn't talk to me. Turns out I was intimidating because I never wanted to talk and was too scared to be around them, so they eventually gave up. Since then I've been trying to make an effort to be nice and say hi to everyone, but I'm still struggling a bit. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.